5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland Podcast. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland Podcast. This is where you get the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe, learning from their stories and experiences as we interview overlanders from places like Australia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas.
You will learn the basics to the advanced in overlanding, so buckle up and get ready for more adventure. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lisa. This is part 2 with Dominik Reinhard of Zen Motero.
Last week we left off talking about border crossings and currency exchange. This week we get deep into Dominik's overall setup, along with deeply inspiring thoughts of overland travel, culture, and life learnings from Dominik. So what do you say, Lisa? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's jump back into our interview with Dominik of Zen Motero.
One more thing is to have always cash with you. I'm always carrying roughly $500 with me because you'll never know, where to end up, or your credit cards might get stolen or whatever, and you need to have always cash with you. Cash is king.
Okay, smart. Any other specific border crossings that stand out to
you? Maybe one border crossing in from Bolivia into Peru at the Lake Titicaca. There were a couple of police officers who were corrupt. And they wanted to have money from me in order to cross the border. This was really bad. But, sometimes that happens. And you need to know how to manage this kind of situations. But, you have to deal with that.
Okay. So any specific safety planning that you do or would recommend for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's crucial. When you travel Central or South America in particular, it's really, really important to know what you're doing. You can't be naive. You have to be prepared. I mean, my rules were always not to ride at night, especially with a motorcycle. Sometimes, you if you're running late or whatever, I mean, it happens. But the norm should be, or the standard rule should be, not to ride at night. There could be, for example, lids missing, for water drainage. I've seen that a couple of times, and I mean, when you ride into one of those holes, I mean, that's not really healthy. Then what else? I would distribute always my money. I would carry all my really valuable belongings in, very close to my body. I would distribute it in several places. When I would be traveling, again to larger cities, I would want to make sure that I know what areas are no-goes. Where you're not going to, we're definitely not wanting to ride through. There was, I think, 1 year, or I think it was last year or 2 years ago, where 2 Italian motor riders were riding, unfortunately, through a favela in Rio de Janeiro. And because there were varying GoPros, technical equipment, and the folks in the favela thought they would bear from the police, and one of them got shot dead. So unfortunately, this is something you need to be very well aware of, that there are certain areas in South America, especially in large cities, where you should absolutely not drive with a motorbike through. What else? I mean, not walking through, not walking in the night through dark streets, not just stopping a taxi on the road. You'll never know. I mean, it does not have to be, but there can be severe safety issues with that. So I would always, for example, ask an Uber if I would not like to ride my motorcycle during the night, as said, or in a bigger city. I would take an Uber.
And then what would you do with your bike?
I would park it inside of a hostel.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That's also something. I mean, I would not leave my bike standing outside, nowhere. And if I would have to, I would always have an eye on it. This is, it's sometimes difficult when of course you've got all your luggage with you, and you want to purchase some groceries. So sometimes you just need to leave your stuff behind, but try to see that you make it fast, or maybe ask someone to have a look. But again, when you're staying overnight somewhere, I would always put it inside, so when no one sees it.
Okay. Now, did you work on the road while you were doing this trip?
I was working on my travel blog, but in terms of, that was my own project. But in terms of making money, no. I was saving up all my money, and I was selling everything before I was starting my trip, my travels, and I was living off my savings.
Okay.
And that was great because I could really focus on my travels, on my journey of self-discovery, etc., without being worried to earn money. That was awesome.
Okay. Navigation and communication. How did you make sure you knew where you were, and hopefully you didn't get lost?
Well, of course, you always get lost at a certain point, but
sometimes that's not bad, right?
It's not bad. I mean, this is usually where you will be having the greatest adventures. That's awesome. But it's also frightening. But this is usually where you will have the best memories and the best adventures. But in general, again, it was try and error at the beginning. So I thought, when I purchased everything at the beginning in Brazil, I thought that just a normal mobile phone with a GPS, with for example Google Maps or Maps.me, two really nice applications I can recommend, by the way. That would be working out, I thought, but no. So I figured out that throughout the time the battery would be suffering from my mobile phone, and this is also something I was not so satisfied with the BMW and the charger. Sometimes it would be losing the connection, and I would not realize, and then I would have no battery anymore. So my cell phone went dead, and so of course I didn't know anymore where I was. I had a rough idea, and in the end I got to my next destinations, but I decided to purchase a proper GPS from Garmin, and that was actually really good. So I was navigating with, on the one hand side, my GPS, my Garmin, and my cell phone, and that worked out very well.
Okay. And do you have a backup plan to call for help if you need, like a Garmin InReach or a Spot?
Yes. Again, here I didn't really know that this kind of stuff exists when I was doing my trip,
Okay.
and because I was really fairly new to overlanding, and at the beginning, I really asked myself the question: okay, what do you do when you get into some issues, troubles, when you break down somewhere in the middle of nowhere? And initially, that was funny. I bought this emergency rockets. I don't know. When you're on the sea on the boat,
Okay.
then you've got this kind of signal rockets you can shoot into the air.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I don't know how you call them, but I purchased 2 of them, and so that was my backup plan for getting stuck or getting into emergency situations. And after half of my trip, I realized there are actually some better options, which are more reliable,
Yeah.
like Spot, and I purchased the Spot, and I'm very, very happy, very satisfied with it. I never had to use it, luckily, because I always found help on the road when I broke down. But it's good to know that when you're really getting into serious issues, that you can rely on this kind of technology. It's great. I would recommend anyone to get that.
Okay, very good. So I understand we talked a little bit about you purchased your bike in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to do it all over again, would you do the same thing or would you do something completely different?
From a challenge point of perspective, I would do it again because, I love challenges. But after doing this kind of experience, I actually would not do it again because it was very, very difficult. I mean, there's a lot of bureaucracy behind it. It takes a lot of time. And for sure, there are other options, like, for example, I figured out later on that purchasing a bike in Chile or in Colombia is the easier option and is not as expensive as in Brazil. But on the other hand side, I was very, very grateful for the experiences because now I know how to manage to buy a motorcycle in Brazil. I know the culture. In the end, I lived for 6 weeks in Sao Paulo, so I could establish a network of amazing friends. I dig deeper into the culture. As said, I got to know the way of living in this amazing country, and so from this perspective, from my learnings, I would always do it again. But as a recommendation for other people. And there are like 2 songs which are popping up to my mind. It's a song from Celine Dion, "Think Twice," and the second song would be from Guns N' Roses, "Welcome to the Jungle." So
Very good.
be very well aware of what you're trying to accomplish. It's really crucial. It's very, very difficult, and it will take a lot of time. But the learnings will be absolutely priceless.
Okay, that's great. So onboard necessities, let's go through those really quick. How much fuel were you able to carry? How far did that take you? And how did you calculate your fuel needs?
Mm-hmm. So the bike would be able to carry 16 liters, so that would be 4 gallons, and that would get me up to 320 kilometers. That's like what, 200 miles maybe, and I would be carrying also at the beginning I was carrying 2 more gallons of petrol with me, but I figured out that throughout the trip or throughout the different kind of landscapes I was riding through, that an additional container of petrol, let's say an additional gallon, so in total 5 gallons of petrol would bring me anywhere.
Okay.
Sometimes, of course, I mean, there were I think 1 or 2 situations where I got to the next petrol station on the last meters of my petrol, but I made it.
That's awesome. It must have been a little nerve-wracking, no?
No, it always is. Yeah.
Wondering if you're going to get there.
Yes, no, it's true. I mean, especially when you don't really know 100% when the next petrol station is coming. So this is something. If you have the luxury to carry more petrol with you than is needed, it's good. But sometimes, even maybe if you do that, sometimes you're just stupid and you're like, no, maybe you're too lazy. For example, in Carretera Austral in Chile, it's a place, or the Route 40 in Argentina. There's sometimes not so many petrol stations, and sometimes even when you find the petrol stations, it's not guaranteed that they also have the petrol, and so it can be nerve-wracking. Sometimes.
How many times did you show up and they didn't have any gas?
There I was always lucky. They always had. I was lucky. I was lucky. They always had in Bolivia, for example, at the border crossing from Brazil, the Pantanal into the east of the country of Bolivia. It's a place where when there is a new delivery of petrol, it runs out so fast because people know it. So once the new delivery of the petrol is arriving, you will see so many people coming with their containers and they're just filling up the petrol. So it's only a matter of time until they're running dry again.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, you have to be aware of that. But I mean, in the end, I think this is one of the key learnings of a trip like that you cannot plan anything. I mean, you can prepare yourself, but especially in these kind of moments where stuff like that happens, this is the stuff you will be telling your children or your grandchildren of in the future. And, this is what makes this trip so unique and so adventurous. So it will be good for people when, not getting gas because they're running dry.
That's great. So how much water were you able to carry, and how did you manage purification if you needed to?
Yeah. I would always carry 2 to 3 liters of water with me. And most of the time that would be sufficient. Because again, I mean, when you do this, now in talking for the Americas, even in the most deserted areas, you would be able somewhere to get water. Maybe not necessarily from a commercial shop or supermarket. In this case, I would have a live straw with me. It's a device where you can basically filtrate the water, and then you can drink, from a pond or whatever. So that would be a life-saving device. But apart from that, again, I was never having any serious issues with water supply. Only once, and that was again in Baja California, where I was going off-road, and it's a circuit of missions in this area, and there's absolutely nothing, and you've got temperatures close to 40 degrees Celsius plus, and 2 liters of water I was carrying at this day with me was absolutely not sufficient, and there was no supermarket or no shops. And in the end, when I luckily arrived at one of those missions, I was asking the local people who were living there, maybe community of, I don't know, maybe 40 people. And they were giving me some water from their own fountain.
Oh, well, that was good.
Yeah. I was really desperate.
Probably a little nervous, right?
Absolutely. I was really nervous. I had enough petrol with me, but not enough water. And then especially when you go off-road, and that takes a lot of energy, and especially when it's really when you're riding under 40 degrees Celsius. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, you're sweating so much, you're losing so much water. There you can't carry enough water with you. That was actually a bit stupid. But again, that's the Adventurist. This is the stuff why I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, that's the adventure. That's where you learn from, and you really find out who you are out there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Great life learnings.
Yep. And you had a great blog post on 10 reasons a sabbatical makes you a better leader. You talked about being humble, giving back. In your view, as an overland traveler, what would you like to see our listeners take away from those lessons?
That's a good one. I mean, I was writing that article down because I think it's really important that after such great experiences to somewhere fix your learnings. And because otherwise, if you keep on going, and after a certain while, you get basically drawn back into the sort of normal life. So I think it was really, really important to write down my most important life lessons throughout this trip. And I would recommend other overlanders, to stay open, to stay flexible in terms of learnings, to see what is happening. You have to do these experiences yourself. Otherwise, these are kind of words. And when you start to travel for such a long-term period of time, you will see that those words will actually make sense. And these are the learnings, because otherwise you will never be able to understand. Even though you might sort of understand what a person is talking about, you will never be able to make those kind of links, if you know what I'm saying, to give these words a meaning. And this meaning can be very different from person to person. So I'm not I want to encourage people, I want to inspire people to be open towards these kind of life learnings, to see what other cultures are about, other countries have to offer, because we are growing up in this developed countries where education, for example, where healthcare is normal. We perceive that as something very normal, while in other countries like in South America or in Central America, or in Asia, the list goes on, of course, it's not normal. And so for me, it was very crucial and very important to realize that and to see how people are living. And we're talking about globalization and, to enhance the standards of other countries. But in our developed countries, we are doing this kind of discussions on a micro level, while in developing countries, the gaps are still huge. And to put these things into perspective is absolutely important. And you become also more humble. You at the beginning, because I was working in the life science industry for 10 years, and I was in sales. I was traveling a lot, and always business class, always the best hotels, and so on. And I was very picky, and in Vietnam, for example, there was once I asked a hotel manager, I was staying in a hotel at this time, to show me like, I think 20 different rooms to try out the best mattress, which is crazy. Afterwards, I was sleeping in a hammock with 200 other people on the Amazon River, for example, or camping in the most beautiful nature of Alaska. So you get more humble, you get more, how shall I say it? I mean, you put things more into perspective, what is really important in life. And to see again how people are trying to survive, for example, in the Guajira Desert in Colombia. It's one of the poorest regions in Colombia in South America. The children, they're simply happy when they get some water. So I would bring some bottles of water with me, or some apples, some fruits, and or soap. Some things which are for us absolutely normal, but for the people living in these poor areas, it's absolutely great. And
yeah, it changes your perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely, Chris. It changes absolutely your perspective, and it deeply anchored the need inside myself to give back to society. This is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I love it.
Because if you want to enhance, and it gets no philosophical, of course, but if you want to enhance in this world, as human beings, and then we have to see that we have to give back, that to realize that just because we are born and raised in developed countries, and there are other people, they're not so lucky like we are, and it's good to give back.
That's good. So on that same note, any philanthropy from what you've mentioned there, any other philanthropy, volunteering, or inspiring others that you've focused on during your trip, or any opportunities that you've seen our listeners could take advantage of in a smart and ethical way as they go about their overland travels?
Yeah. I mean, if you plan in enough time and you want to give something back, there are a lot of opportunities, like teaching English, for example, teaching another language, or, for example, having any kind of supplies with you, which are really useful for the very poor people, like just a pencil or something to write on, soap, toothbrush, water, maybe toys as well. I mean, this is the advantage if you are traveling in a car, if you have the space to store all that kind of stuff.
True.
Because when you travel on a motorbike, you're always very much limited. But this is something you can do, just to stop by. Also say hello, I mean, it's also a matter of respect. Knowing also the language helps a lot when you travel in Central and South America, because the majority of the people, they don't speak English. So, it's nice to stop by and, just to show that you're not a simple tourist, but that you're interested in the other culture, to give back, because this will enhance also the picture of the overlander in the Americas. And I'm working at the moment on a calendar of my trip. It's going to be the dream roads in South America, and I'm planning to spend a part of the earnings to an NGO. Which is either in the Guajira Desert, or it's going to be a project in Cali, in Colombia as well, or even in Brazil. I need still to figure out, but part of these earnings will be going to an organization which are helping people.
Okay, very good. This has been a lot of fun, Dominik. Anything that we've missed?
No, I think there's plenty of stuff which we missed, but I think this was a good setup. It was a good summary of the trip.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun talking to you. I'm pretty sure we could talk for another hour or two.
Yeah.
Very good. So let's wrap things up with some basics on your setup, or some fun facts about you. What's a favorite drink in the morning to get you going after getting prepared for a long day on the road?
I would always say it's coffee. I love coffee. The funny fact in South America, despite Brazil and Colombia, the coffee is really bad in the other countries of South America, to my surprise. So I didn't really drink a lot of coffee anymore in the mornings. And then I just had water or anything. You need to see what helps you best. But usually it would be coffee.
Okay. And what's a favorite beverage to wind down after a long day on the road?
That would vary. Usually I like to drink a beer. It's like a simple beer because this is, usually you can't do too many things wrong with beer. And but in Patagonia, when it got really cold, I had some whiskey with me.
Oh, there you go.
That helped to warm up and to sleep better in the cold nights.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is your best advice to aspiring overlanders like us?
Just be open, be spontaneous. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. So just get going. That's the most important lesson. Just get going and see what happens.
That's great. And how can people learn more about you and what you're up to these days?
Yeah. I'm having a travel blog where I'm posting stories on my travels, on my life learnings, as already mentioned, on my setup and anything else. And this is called Zenmotero, ZenMotero.com. And also on Instagram, same thing, Zenmotero. And Zenmotero comes from Zen. So because at the beginning of my journey, I wanted to learn more about myself. And Zen is a form of Buddhism which originated in Japan. And, it's a bit more about the deeper meaning of life on the one hand side. And on the other hand side, it also means to be relaxed, to be Zen, to be relaxed and not worrying about things that you cannot actually change. And so this is one part of the name of my blog. And Motero, this simply means a biker. I'm a biker by heart. So Zen Motero.
That's awesome. Love it. Any more information you'd like to give or useful resources that our listeners should check out?
I'm always open to give advice to overlanders. I'm always happy to help. Just reach out through either my Instagram account or my blog, and I'm always happy to help. Always.
That's great. Dominik, thank you so much for your time today. We are humbled that you've given us such an amazing look into your world and experiences and knowledge. So safe travels and adventures to you. We hope to catch up with you again sometime in the future.
Thank you very much, Chris. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, thanks so much. Cheers.
Cheers.
I don't know if I've ever been so inspired to think so deeply about overland travel, the cultures that you go through and connect with in local communities and leaving a positive impact.
It's a good idea to visit the show notes page on our website at ghteoverland.com/podcasts. Select the Dominik Reinhard episode. All the details and helpful links are already there for you.
Next week, we have a real treat for you. As previously mentioned, we are changing things up a bit. Nothing dramatic, but what we hope will be more informative and better equipping you to go from weekend overlander to multiple country overlander, or whatever lights your overlanding fire. For more details on how our guests constructed their overall rigs, why they chose specific gear, especially the favorite refrigerator, and more details on finances, get ready for another epic episode next week as we head to Botswana. So keep those suggestions and feedback coming. You can send your questions, suggestions, and feedback to ghtoverlandpodcast@gmail.com. If you have an Amazon Echo, remember to tell Alexa to play the GHT Overland podcast. We'd love it if you'd connect with us on social media at GHT Overland. Be sure to share this episode with your friends who enjoy travel off the beaten path. Overland travel is all about meeting new friends, seeing the most amazing places on earth, and of course, new food and new drinks.
So before you race off, it would mean the world to us if you'd rate and review the podcast. Give GHT Overland a little iTunes love so we can reach as many overlanders as possible. Thank you, and we will see you next Thursday for a brand new episode of the GHT Overland podcast. Bye.